Toxic people keep choosing you because a part of you keeps choosing them first. You never see it happen. It happens under the window where you live. Jung has a name for the part that reaches first. He calls it a complex, a splinter of you that opens the door while you are still upstairs deciding. 100 years ago, in a Swiss clinic, he catches one of these with a stopwatch. On certain words, the body flinches before the person knows why. That same flinch is in you. It fires the moment the wrong person walks up. You can keep calling it fate and let it choose your life, or follow the reach back to where it was trained. But the reach is only half of why the wrong person feels like destiny. There is a second picture by that door, one you hung there yourself and have spent years refusing to look at. The door opens from the inside, and the one version of this you can ever solve is the one that was always on your side of it. Start with the thing you have never been able to explain to anyone because you know exactly what it is. It has happened more than once. A person arrives, and it is electric, and it feels like the realest thing that has ever happened to you. Then over months or years, that same person curdles into the one who drains you, belittles you, keeps you off balance in your own home. You leave, or they leave, and you swear it was a one-off, a bad match, rotten luck. Then it happens again, a different face, a different name, the same weather. Some nights the screen is the wrong place for this. If you'd rather just listen, Surreal Mind is on Spotify now. The words, in the dark. Wherever you are, links in the description. So you did what a reasonable person does. You went looking for the flaw in you that explains it, and prosecuted yourself for years on the one charge. You keep choosing wrong, but look closer at the word choosing, because it hides the whole mystery. You did not sit down, weigh your options, and select the person who would hurt you. It was faster than that. They walked into the room and something in you sat up and said, "That one," before you had a single reason. The recognition came first, and the reasons you invented later. You have felt it in a crowded room, one face pulling your whole attention before you know the name that goes with it. Jung spends his life mapping the parts of us that move before we do. Under the calm voice you think of as yourself, whole clusters of feeling have split off and set up on their own, each one grown around an old wound, each behaving like a small separate person with its own will. Any one of them can seize the controls before your conscious self understands what is happening. He calls each one a complex, and it lives in you like a lodger you never approved. It does not ask your permission. It acts in your name with your hands, and leaves you to explain the wreckage afterward as though you had chosen it. Take one life, because this stops being abstract the moment it has a face. A woman of 62. She reads people for a living. For decades she has been the one brought in to deliver the hard news, and she can tell within a minute when the person across the table is lying to her. She has never once been outmaneuvered there, and more than once in her own front hall, she has been the last to see it coming. Follow what that does to the story. If a part of you moves before you do, then the jolt you have been calling love at first sight, and the jolt you have been calling my terrible taste in people might be the same jolt. Something in you recognized something in them instantly and reached. By the time you upstairs had a thought about it, the reaching was already done. This is the picture to hold. There is an upstairs in you, the reasonable one who does not want another of these. And there is a downstairs, a hall you rarely visit, where something older stands at the door with its hand already on the latch. On this particular door, the one downstairs has been winning your whole life. But if a part of you is opening that door before you arrive, then there is a mechanism down there worth following all the way down, from where it was installed to what it runs on to how it is finally shut off. It is not a stranger. You posted it there yourself a long time ago, and you have forgotten you ever did. Before we go down to the hall, there are 2 suspects to clear, 1 figure to find, and 1 move to make that is finally yours. Start with the suspects, because as long as you believe either one of them did it, you will never look in the right place. The first suspect is them, the predator. This one is partly true, and it matters, so hold it with care. Toxic people are real. Cruelty is real. If someone treated you with contempt, that is on them, fully, and no explanation on this channel moves 1 gram of that weight onto you. Understanding why a pattern repeats is a separate thing from deciding you deserved what was done to you. Hold both of those at once. The pure predator story cannot account for the repetition. If it were only that bad people hunt good people, you would get hunted at random, by all sorts. You are hit by a type, the same type, again and again, as though you gave off a frequency only one kind of receiver can hear. The second suspect is you, but the flattering version of you. The rare empath whose light is simply too bright, so the darkness comes to feed. It feels wonderful to hear. It also leaves you helpless, because if your goodness is the bait, your only moves are to dim yourself or trust no one. Jung notes that even our warmest social feeling carries a good deal of makeup in it. Any story about your pattern that ends with you being too wonderful should be the first story you check for a con. A compliment is exactly what a hook is baited with. So set both suspects down. The predator is guilty of what they did and never of why you keep ending up in the room. Your goodness is real, and it is not the mechanism. There is one suspect nobody thinks to question, and it hides in plain sight. It is the good mask you wear. Jung says each of us builds a face to meet the world, an acceptable, capable, agreeable version that we wear to be loved and employed and let in. He calls it the persona, a compromise struck between who you are and what the world will accept. For many, the central plank of that mask is goodness. Being kind, being easy, being the one who does not make trouble or get angry or need too much. If that is your mask, you built it for a reason. Somewhere back there, the parts of you that were sharp or hungry or furious or demanding got you hurt or got you left. So you took them off the shelf, put them in a back room, and became the good one. That is the move that sets the whole trap. Everything you took off the shelf did not disappear. It went downstairs. And the more of yourself you exile to keep the mask clean, the more there is standing in the dark of your own hall, waiting, with a hand on the door. None of this makes you the villain of your own story. It makes you the one place the story can actually be solved. You cannot reach into a toxic person and repair them, but the door they keep walking through is on your property, and the one who keeps opening it answers to you once you finally go down and meet it. But the mechanism itself is still unexplained. What could it possibly be matching these people against, so fast, so surely, that it knows them before you do? Jung knows where to look, and it begins with a stopwatch and a room full of ordinary words. More than 100 years ago, in a Swiss hospital, Jung runs an experiment that sounds almost too simple to matter. He sits a person down and reads them a long list of plain words, one at a time. Table, river, mother, bread. For each word, the person answers with the first word that comes, and Jung times it to the fraction of a second, watching a needle wired to the body for the smallest jump, listening for the breath to change. Most words come back clean and fast. On certain words, the instrument catches what the face is trying to hide. The person stumbles. They go blank or take 3 seconds where one took 1. And the needle jumps. Jung follows those jumps like footprints, and they lead every time to a wound the person never mentioned. A buried cluster of feeling, fully charged, that fires the instant a word comes near it. Jung describes these buried clusters as splinter personalities, small selves that can act against the conscious one and, in a bad moment, take it over entirely, like a rival authority running the house out of sight. You never decide to react through them. They simply react through you, and that is your doorkeeper. A real split-off piece of you with a job it took on long ago and never once put down. What the doorkeeper is looking at comes from one place, the emotional weather of your first home. Jung is clear that the earliest bonds lay down the template for every bond that follows, and that a child absorbs the whole mood of a house long before it has words for any of it. So the doorkeeper was posted during your childhood, handed one reference image and told, "This is what home feels like. Open the door for this." The cruelty is precise. If your first taste of love was steady and warm, the doorkeeper matches for steady and warm, and you find calm people restful and cruel people boring, and you never watch this video. But if the love you grew up inside was anxious or conditional or laced with contempt or had to be earned and never once rested, then that is the photograph on the wall. That is what got labeled home. The doorkeeper scans every new face for that weather and lights up the moment it finds a match. The calm, kind person who would never hurt you registers as nothing. No signal, no spark. The person carrying the old familiar damage registers as fate, because to the doorkeeper, they are the one. They match the only picture of love it was ever given. Think of the woman again. Her father was adored and charming and never quite reliable, and she learned as a girl to read the sky of his face, to stay useful, to earn the good days and brace for the rest. Love to her has always meant reaching for a warmth that will not quite stay. So when a person walks up who feels like a bright day about to turn, the doorkeeper reads home, and the danger never registers. And the doorkeeper is not matching for whether they are good to you. That was never in its instructions. A small child in a hard house does not get to hold out for kindness. That child learns to read the one face that means the storm is coming and to love it anyway, because it is the only face there is. So the doorkeeper knows familiarity. It was never taught safety. And to a nervous system, familiar and safe can feel like a single word, even when they are opposites. That is why the warning signs you can name out loud never stop you at the door. Feel how completely this rewrites the shame. What you called terrible taste was flawless aim all along. You have been hitting the target you were handed with heartbreaking accuracy for years and calling it failure, which means the one door you can finally change is this one, and the only way to change it is to go down to it yourself. But the old weather is only half of why these people feel like destiny, and it is the gentler half. There is a second picture pinned by that door, and you hung it there and then spent your life refusing to look at it. It shows no one you have ever dated or loved. The face in it is your own, the half of you that you buried. The old weather makes the wrong person feel familiar. The second picture makes them feel like destiny. Now the second picture. When you built the good mask, you took a great deal of yourself off the shelf. The anger that got you in trouble. The wanting that felt too big. The part that could say no and mean it. You did not kill any of it because you cannot. Jung is blunt about where it goes. It drops into the shadow, the disowned half of you, and it waits there at full charge, unlived, still completely yours. And this is the thing Jung understands that the red flag lists never will. What you cannot live in yourself, you go looking for in someone else. He calls it projection. The parts you refuse to own get cast outward onto other people, so that you meet your own exile qualities out in the world wearing a stranger's face, and you have no idea you are looking at yourself. Watch what walks up the path. A person who is bold where you are careful, who takes what they want without flinching, who does not audition for anyone's approval, who has every tooth you filed off yourself decades ago. The doorkeeper matches them against the old weather. But you upstairs do something too. You throw your own exiled portrait right onto them. You feel a pull with no rational floor, a certainty that they are special, magnetic, more real than anyone else in the room. That magnetism has a source, and the source is you. What you feel across the room is your own buried power, hanging on a stranger's frame. That is why the calm, kind person felt like nothing, and this one feels like lightning. This one is carrying the half you disowned. The shadow is not only the ugly basement, it holds your undeveloped strength, your unlived vitality, the best of what you never let yourself become. So when it walks up wearing someone else's clothes, of course it feels like fate. You are reaching for yourself, and you happen to pick the one person holding the missing half. If that just landed somewhere real, put it in the comments, in your own words, or borrow mine. The pull was always coming from my side. Say it once, out loud or in text, and it stops running the house in the dark. Now see the whole trap in one frame. The doorkeeper opens the door because they match your oldest idea of home. You throw it wide because they are wearing the wildness you disowned. Two separate hooks, in the same person, at the same instant. And the collision feels so total that no reasonable upstairs voice stands a chance. You are already at finally. And this is where Jung's real cure begins, and it runs opposite to the advice you have been given your whole life. You were told to study them harder, to memorize the red flags. But you cannot solve a projection by staring at the screen. You solve it by turning to find what casts the image. That means walking down to the hall, taking your own portrait off the wall, and owning the anger and the hunger and the ferocity as yours, so you stop needing to date them to feel them. What you can own in yourself, you can stop chasing in someone who will use it against you. Think of the woman once more, halfway down her own stairs. Beside the storm of her childhood hangs the portrait of everything she cut away to become the one who needs nothing, the permission she never gave herself to want anything at all. Every charmer she ever fell for was wearing that portrait like a borrowed coat, and she called the recognition destiny. This is the turn the whole case was walking toward. You are not weak, and you are not cursed. Reading other people better was never the answer. What you need is to go and reclaim the parts of yourself you gave away, because as long as they hang by that door, anyone who wears them will look like love. The wildness was yours all along. You kept hanging it on someone else's wall. But knowing about the two pictures does not free you yet, and there is a reason. Once that door is open, something happens in the hall that dissolves the very line between you and them. And it is the thing that makes these bonds so nearly impossible to leave. Jung named it a century ago. Once you see it, you will understand why willpower was never going to be enough. Everyone who has been inside one of these knows the part that makes no sense from the outside. Once you are in, you cannot find the door. Friends ask why you do not just leave, and the question feels almost stupid, because leaving would be like leaving your own body. Their moods run your nervous system. Their approval is your weather. You lose track of what you think, what you want, because your version and theirs have fused into one fog. None of this is you being pathetic. There is a specific psychological event underneath it, and Jung named it. He borrows a phrase for the deepest form of it, participation mystique, an unconscious merging in which the boundary between two people dissolves, so that you are no longer a separate self meeting another. You are bled into them, and they into you. And because a projection is running the whole time, part of what you are so desperate not to lose in them is your own exiled self, still hanging on their frame. Leaving them feels like amputating a piece of yourself. So you stay, and you call it love, and it is closer to a kind of possession. This is why the standard advice keeps failing you. Willpower assumes two clear people, one of whom can simply decide. In the merge, there is a fog with two names. You cannot set a boundary against a state where you cannot even find your own edge. First, you have to become a separate person again, and that is done in the hall, not at the door. Other people cannot rescue you from it either. They cannot feel that to you, walking out feels like tearing something out of your own chest. Every time a friend lists the reasons and you nod and go back anyway, you are obeying the plain arithmetic of a self that is half dissolved into someone else. That is not a character flaw. Understanding it should end the private verdict that you are a fool who keeps going back. You kept going back for the part of yourself that was still trapped inside it. This is the actual work, slower and quieter than anyone selling a 5-step exit will admit. You do not storm downstairs and drag the doorkeeper out. The doorkeeper is a frightened child who took a job during a storm, and pushing at it only drives it deeper. You go down gently and meet it, and for the first time in your life, you look at what it has been looking at. You take the storm off the wall and you grieve it, because it is real, and it was your childhood, and it was not your fault, and it is also not a definition of love you are required to keep obeying. Then you take down your own exiled portrait, and this is the turn that ends the pattern. You withdraw the projection. You look at the anger, the appetite, the refusal, the ferocity, and instead of chasing it in someone who will turn it against you, you begin, slowly, to live it yourself. Understand what reclaiming actually asks, because it is not a license to become cruel. Owning your anger does not mean unloading it on people. It means feeling it, so it stops leaking out sideways and needing a proxy. Owning your appetite means dropping the pretense that you want nothing, the very pretense that made the taker look so thrilling. None of this turns you into the toxic person. It stops you outsourcing the parts of you they were only ever holding hostage. And feel how this changes what happens the next time someone walks up the path carrying that old electricity. The jolt still comes. The doorkeeper is not dead, and the wiring is old. But now there is someone home upstairs who knows what the jolt is. You feel the pull, and instead of reading it as destiny, you read it as information. That spark means they match the storm. That magnetism means they are wearing something of yours. Neither one is a reason to open the door. Both of them now are a warning. But it is one thing to understand your own hall from up here, and another to walk down into it in a real life, especially if you have spent years being the strong one, the clear one, the person everyone assumes has all of this handled. Let me show you what this looks like in one life, in the exact person who is certain this video cannot be about her. Look at the woman again, at her kitchen table on a weeknight, at the end of the same story once more. A person who arrived like lightning, who seemed to see straight through her, who felt like coming home after years away, and who slowly turned cold and contemptuous until she was walking on eggshells in her own house. She can name every flag she cataloged in real time and walked past anyway. None of it has ever told her why a woman who reads everyone was the last to know at her own door. Tonight she stops hunting for what was wrong with the last person and asks a different question. What is it in me that heard that lightning and called it home? In the quiet, she lets the answer surface. A father who was adored and charming and never once steady, whose warmth had to be won and never rested, so that the only love that ever registered as home was love that kept her reaching. Under that, something else comes up. The half of her she filed away to become the one who needs nothing. Her own permission to be difficult, to want too much, to rest without earning it. She does not call anyone or block anyone. She sits with the two pictures, the storm, and her own exiled face, and lets them be hers. Look at what a life like hers was actually running on. Others called it weakness or bad taste. It was aim. She was matching a photograph she did not know was on the wall, with a precision that would be beautiful if it had not cost her so much. And the mercy hidden in all of it is that the exiled half of her did not rot while she ignored it. It only waited. It is still hers, still charged, still able to be lived the moment she stops hanging it on the next stranger who walks up carrying that old familiar storm. There is a mercy in the timing, too. She spent years believing she had wasted her best decades, that the damage was done and the pattern was who she was now. The doorkeeper had run the same errand since she was a girl, so the fix was always the same small thing, available at any age. Introduce the woman at the window to the keeper in the hall. That introduction can happen on any ordinary night at any kitchen table the moment she stops hunting the last person and turns around. When she finally takes it back, it does not turn her cold, and it does not turn her into them. That is the last thing the work protects her from. She comes back up the stairs with a self. A wall keeps everyone out. A self can finally tell who is safe. In time, she lets people close again, and the calm ones stop reading as empty, because she is no longer hanging her disowned half on a stranger's wall. The next time the old jolt comes, she feels it, and something in her goes quiet and a little sad, because now she knows exactly what it is, and she lets the door stay shut. None of that looks dramatic from the outside. All of it is a woman who finally came downstairs and took the post at her own door. Jung has a word for the whole of it: individuation, becoming a single, whole, separate self, so that you can meet a real person standing in front of you instead of a hook you baited years ago and forgot. And once you have gone down to your own hall, even once, even badly, you finally understand why the pattern was never proof that something in you is broken, and why the people worth grieving for are the ones who never learn there is a door at all, or a keeper, or a self that could one day answer it. Jung spends his life proving that we are not one calm mind making calm choices. We are houses with rooms we never visit, and figures in those rooms who move before we do. He would not have called your pattern bad luck, and he would never have called you a magnet for the darkness. To him, a part of you, posted at the door in a storm long ago, has been recognizing your childhood in strangers and calling it love, while another part of you keeps handing those strangers the half of yourself you were too afraid to carry. You know the jolt, I mean, the one that has felt like fate every time and buried you every time. And underneath it, you have quietly wondered what is wrong with you that safety feels like nothing at all. Nothing is wrong with you. Something is only waiting downstairs to be met. So there is one thing to do, and it is small because the turn is always small. The next time the lightning hits, that certainty that this person is different, this one is fate, do not follow it and do not shame yourself for feeling it. Stop. Get quiet and ask it one honest question. What does this person feel like from my childhood, and what part of me am I hoping they will carry for me? You do not have to have the answer tonight. You only have to stop calling the jolt destiny long enough to trace it back to the part of you that reached. Meeting the keeper is how you slowly become one. Tell me in the comments the thing you have been calling chemistry that you are starting to think might be recognition. Or borrow this one: I am learning to answer my own door, saying it is the first time the keeper hears you coming. And if you are in something right now that frightens you or is not safe, understanding your side of the door is never a reason to stay. Your safety comes first, always. Getting out and finding real support is part of this work, never a failure of it.
Empaths aren't broken, they're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com.